Venerable Emeritus Professor Kuala Lumpur Dhammajoti holds a Doctor in Buddhist Studies awarded by the University of Kelaniya in 1990. In fact, he was the very first to obtain a PhD degree from the Postgraduate Institute of Pali and Buddhist Studies, University of Kelaniya. His MA dissertation, Skandila's Abhidharma Avatara, and the PhD thesis, the earliest version of the Chinese Dharmapada, both published by the University of Kelaniya, have been highly acclaimed by the international community of Buddhist scholars. Through his scholarly writings and highly successful university teaching, he has come to be esteemed internationally as a doyen of Buddhist studies. Venerable Emeritus Professor K.L. Dhammajoti arrived in Sri Lanka in late 1977 to commence his educational career at University of Kelaniya and went on to be the only foreign scholar in modern time approved as an exception by the university's council as a permanent professor. Over the last 45 years, he has maintained a deep, abiding and a close connection with University of Kelaniya, which is reflected through the yeoman service he has done for the support of University of Kelaniya and the student of Buddhist studies. Positions held and awards received. Venerable Emeritus Professor Dhammajoti began his teaching career in early 1982 as a senior lecturer at PGI-PBS and in 1995 became its head of the Department of Buddhist Sources. From 1996 to 1998, he served as an associate professor of the same institute. From 1998 to 2006, as a full professor. In 2000, in his sabbatical leave, he was invited to serve as the Numata Chair in the Buddhist Studies at the University of Calgary, Canada. He has also served as a visiting professor in several foreign universities. In 2006, he was invited to serve as the professor of the Buddhist Studies at the University of Hong Kong. There, in the following year, he was awarded the Glorious Sun Endowed Professorship of Buddhist Studies, one of the most prestigious endowed professorships for the Buddhist studies in Asian region. He also served as the university's chairman of the Master of Buddhist Studies program and chairman of the Research Postgraduate Committee before officially retiring in 2015. Since 2014, he has been the chairman and director of the Buddha Dharma Center of Hong Kong, which he founded and which has been affiliated to PGI-PBS from the beginning. Since 2017, he has been the chair professor of the School of Philosophy, Renmin University of China. For his scholarly achievement, he has gained worldwide recognition and received several awards. This includes the Bodhi Award for Outstanding Malaysian Buddhist Scholars by the Young Buddhist Association of Malaysia, the Tripitaka Visharada Award by the Amarapura Sri Saddharma Vansa chapter of Sri Lanka, the Endowed Professorship Buddhist Studies of the University of Hong Kong, the Ki Kangse Foundation Fellowship, the Emeritus Professorship by the International Buddhist College, Thailand in Thailand. In 2021, in recognition of his outstanding scholarship and academic contribution, the University of Hong Kong felicitated him a special ceremony and published in honor of him the Illuminating the Dharma, a volume of essays continuing papers contributed by some of the most eminent international scholars. contribution to international Buddhist academia and global recognition. Emeritus Professor Dhammajoti is acclaimed internationally for his scholarship in the field of Abhidharma studies. He has been invited as the keynote speaker at several international Buddhist conferences, in addition to several special lectures delivered within Sri Lanka, such as the Professor K.N. Jayatilaka Memorial Lecture. The many internationally invited distinguished academic lectures delivered by him include Numata Yemen Lecture on Buddhist Studies, University of Calgary 2000, 2 lectures on Buddhist Theories of Knowledge, University of British Columbia 2005, Faji Jing, the oldest Chinese version of the Dharmapada, some remarks on the language and sect affiliation of its original, at the International Symposium on Textual Studies, International College of Postgraduate Buddhist Studies, Tokyo, December 2006, Sri Lanka's Anudhatu doctrine, with a special reference to his distinction on the Vipaka and Vipakaja, Otani University, Japan in 2011, Three Mama Foundation Distinguished Lectures, the University of Hong Kong, 2018, Aklista Jnana, Vasana and the Origin of the Mahayana, the Oriental Institute, University of Oxford, 2022. Venerable Emeritus Professor Dhammajoti has contributed to several important encyclopedias, including Abhidharma, Encyclopedia of Indian Religions, Canada, Sarvastivadi Abhidharma, Oxford Research Encyclopedia of Religion, Sarvastivada, Wiley Blackwell Encyclopedia of Philosophy and Religion, Sarvastivada Vaibhasika Doctrines, Brill's Encyclopedia of Buddhism. Versed in the 4 major canonical languages, Pali, Sanskrit, Classical Chinese and Tibetan, and capable of assessing scholarly research publications in English, Japanese and French, Venerable Professor Dhammajoti is obviously a successful researcher and prolific Buddhist writer. To date, he has published 7 scholarly books, edited 3 works, 2 felicitation volumes and a collection of essays published by the University of Hong Kong, and also over 70 research papers, contributed substantial scholarly introduction to such scholarly works as the translation of the Abhidharma Kosa Bhashya, nearly 80 pages, and the Viññapti Matrata Siddhi, nearly 40 pages. Several books have been planned by him for publication in the near future, including a systematically guided reader in selected Pali Suttas. Some of his books, including the Sarvastivada Abhidharma Doctrines and Controversies on Perception, Entrance into the Supreme Doctrine, Abhidhammavatara, Reading Buddhist Sanskrit texts, and reading Pali Buddhist texts have been translated into Chinese and are being used as textbooks, besides being sources for Buddhist research in several universities internationally. Equally important is his contribution in initiating and building the project of Chinese translation of the Pali Tripitaka, subsequently completed and published in Taiwan. Academic services and contribution to the University of Kelaniya. As outlined above, he taught for some 22 years as a full-time member of the academic staff since early 1982 at PGIPBS, and for several years as a visiting teacher to the University of Kelaniya Department of Pali and Buddhist Studies. At the University of Kelaniya, he has successfully supervised 18 MPhil and 5 PhD students. At the University of Hong Kong, he produced another 15 PhD. At present, at the Buddha Dharma Center of Hong Kong, he is continuing to supervise several PhD candidates registered with Postgraduate Institute of Pali and Buddhist Studies. Because of his lasting bonds and deep gratitude for the University of Kelaniya and the Postgraduate Institute of Pali and Buddhist Studies, he has strengthened link between the university and the wider Buddhist community around the world, which has significantly contributed to the development of University of Kelaniya's international dimension. After his retirement from the University of Hong Kong, he founded the Buddha Dharma Center of Hong Kong and has since been actively promoting the name and glory of the University of Kelaniya. Several hundred Buddhists have so far received scholarly training in his center's academic courses, undergraduate diploma affiliated to the University of Kelaniya Department of Pali and Buddhist Studies, MA, MPhil and PhD affiliated to the Postgraduate Institute of Pali and Buddhist Studies. Recently, he has also founded the Vidya Charana Buddhist Resource in Malaysia, whose courses of studies are likewise affiliated to the University of Kelaniya. In 2002, Venerable Emeritus Professor Dhammajoti, together with Professor Y. Karunadasa, Professor Oliver Abenayaka, and Professor T. Endo, co-founded the Center for Buddhist Studies in Sri Lanka. In the same year, he co-established the new, well-recognized Journal of Buddhist Studies for the Center of Buddhist Studies, Sri Lanka, JCB SSL, and has since been serving as its editor, with its publication now running into the 19th volume. Senior Professor Dhammajoti Thero. Thank you very much.
By the authority vested to me as a Chancellor, I confer the degree of Doctor of Literature, honoris causa, to the Pandit that was presented me by the Director of Postgraduate Institute of Pali and Buddhist Studies.
Venerable Chancellor, now I sincerely invite the Venerable Pandit Emeritus Professor Kuala Lumpur Dhammajoti, who was awarded the honorary degree of Doctor of Literature, to address the audience present at this convocation.
Most Venerable Professor Mahinda Sangarakita, Chancellor of the University of Kelaniya, Honorable Vice Chancellor of Kelaniya, Senior Professor Nilanti Silva, other esteemed colleagues, scholars, students, and friends. Today, my brief speech is on the Buddhist ideal of transformational education, inspiration for modern university education. My intention is to highlight some teachings from the Sutta Pitaka, discourses by the Buddha, to which we should pay attention. And I believe that the modern educationalist in Buddhist study, in the field of Buddhist study, should be able to derive inspiration at least from the underlying principles. At the outset, let me state that my speech is primarily directed at the fellow Buddhist colleagues, like those who are present here, teaching Buddhist courses in a university institution. However, let me hope that at least in some way, other teachers involved as teachers in the humanities, not necessarily just Buddhist studies, may also find some inspiration in the Buddhist ideal being discussed. To begin with, let me highlight the Buddhist ideal of the balanced and harmonized development of personality as expounded in the teaching of the 5 spiritual faculties. And these are, I think you know very well. 1, Saddha. 2, Viriya. 3, Sati. And 4, Samadhi. And 5, Panya. This represents a comprehensively integrative approach that leads through sati, through mindfulness, to the harmonization of the intellectual, which culminates in liberative insight. And the affective, that is saddha, which culminates in the self-transcendent compassion, and of the externally dynamic viriya, and the internally integrative. These are all to be harmonized through the practice of mindfulness. So the doctrine of the 5 indriyas represents the Buddhist ideal of the integration of the personality. An important traditional term in this context I'd like to highlight is Dhamma Vinaya. I'm sure you are familiar with this term. However, I believe that it should not be taken to merely mean Sutta and Vinaya. Dhamma meaning Sutta and Vinaya meaning the disciplines. But rather, or in fact, not even doctrine and discipline. I think this term goes far beyond this kind of connotation. As an integrated term, it means essentially spiritual education, or better, creative education. This is what I would like to highlight in this short speech. So I prefer to understand Vinaya, this term, not just as disciplinary rules, monastic discipline, but the term itself from vi and ni. Ni means to lead, to guide, and vi means differently, distinctively. So it is guiding and leading distinctively to higher and higher different states of human existence. And this is Dhamma Vinaya. Dhamma Vinaya is a self-sufficient spiritual discipline, a religion in the true sense. And that is to say, a religion, you can say, maybe quoting Erich Fromm, and what he means by religion, and his assertion, proposition that the need for religion is rooted in man's very existence. And we have no time to elaborate it, but I've given the footnotes for those who are interested in this. So religion, the true sense, which conduces to the unfolding of the human potential to ever higher and higher levels. Humanity truly achieved is Buddhahood. The product of this creative or transformative education is the new man. I'm, of course, borrowing a modern philosophical term. Because the product, the whole process of education is creative in the sense that it transforms the person, the learner, and it leads to a brand new product. And that is what we call the new man. In Buddhist term, this is the Arya Pukala. Buddha being the Arya Pukala par excellence. A teacher, now, however, for this process of transformational education to be effective, there are prerequisites. Let me just quote one discourse called the Panya Sutta. There are many others, I'm sure, in the Sutta Pitaka. And this is an example to show the prerequisites on the part of the learner, right? For the learner to be transformed through Buddhist education. One is commitment. This is very important. You commit to your learning. You seek and enter into a spiritual relationship with the teacher, seeking instructions continuously while serving on him. I'm sure today you don't find this easily present, to say the least, you see, in the modern system. You have to enter into a dynamic relationship. You have to tune into the teacher's wisdom. You want to truly learn and truly motivated. Borrowing another modern term by Professor Abraham Maslow, a famous Buddhist psychology professor, that learner must be meta-motivated, motivated for higher values, for higher states of attainment, for truth, for the good, for the true, and for the beautiful. So this is one requirement. And secondly is love and respect towards the teacher. Very often lacking today. And then, more distinctively Buddhistic, a keen sense of moral shamefulness, hirotapa, must be established within the student. And then for the actual transformation of his living in all aspects, this is a commitment. You don't just learn, you don't just acquire knowledge, but you transform yourself, you live according to what you have learned. So it involves the total person, the total being, the total living. And then practice, exclusively devoted to practice, relinquishing all social entanglement. And finally, meditative practice, developing insight into permanence of phenomena existence. I have no time to elaborate, and there are notes for you if you're interested. I just want to emphasize that, among other things, I want to say that today the art of listening is lost. The art of listening consisting in receptivity, in sense of gratitude, and preparedness to be inspired. That's a very, very important term, inspired. Today is lost, especially those who are learning just online, for example. Think of that. And, today in the modern classroom, the teacher doesn't even know the names of the students. Because of the brevity of time, I will only highlight one more doctrine to illustrate that this is the doctrine of the Vimukta Ayatana. There are 5 of them, and we have time to deal with the first 2, which are the most relevant to teachers and students in this context. The first prerequisite for liberation, first of all, the first prerequisite for liberation is full commitment. This sutta that I have just mentioned on Vimukta Ayatana, there's Vimukti Ayatana, says like this: these 5 old bhikkhus, the 5 bases, better to say, for liberation, are the liberation bases wherein the bhikkhu is abiding, heedful, zealous, and committed. Note this term. His not yet liberated thought comes to be liberated. He is not yet fully destroyed. Defilements come to be fully destroyed. and he comes to attain the not yet attained supreme spiritual security. Today, we worry much about security, yeah, in a very shallow sense, and Buddhism offers the ideal of true, perfect security, and the term is yoga kema, which is equated with Nibbana. Accordingly, the trainee, before embarking on training, he must be heedful, he must be zealous, he must be committed, resolute. And in fact, the corresponding exposition in the Sanskrit tradition called Yogachara Bhumi stresses also further qualities such as Suddha, Ashaya, pure inspiration, pure inclinations. This corresponds quite well to what Maslow calls meta-motivation, and a strong desire to learn, of course. The outline of the 5 bases are as follows. First one, listening creatively. You don't just listen to the tape recorder in order to find the best answer for the exam to score an A. Listening creatively to the Dhamma, it says, yatha yatha tassa deseti, in a manner that the teacher teaches. In that very same manner, tata, in that very same manner, so tasmin dhammaye atta parisangvedi cha hoti, dhamma parisangvedi cha hoti. These 2 terms, of course, can be linked to the 4 parisangvedi, but the essential meaning in this context is the gaining of direct insight into the teaching, not just the intellectual understanding, not through the intellectual medium, but you directly realize, experience even, the teaching that is being taught, given, of course, the prerequisites that we have outlined before. This is a very interesting teaching, a good source of thought for modern education. Secondly, he teaches the Dhamma. Now, not listening, but teaching the Dhamma in details, as heard and as fully mastered. The first one is listening, second is teaching, all relevant to education. Thirdly, he recites the Dhamma, not just for the mere sake of preservation of the words of the Buddha. When he recites, he gains deeper and deeper. Every time you recite, you read the sutta like we do today. We read the sutta, we learn these things as students. But today I'm teaching in Hong Kong and other places, China, in the West, and so on. I read them again. I come to, I believe, a high level of inspiration, happiness, bliss. So in the process of teaching also, that the teacher can be transformed, not just the student. That's a very interesting proposition. Then number 4 is continuous ponders over, investigate and examine the Dhamma. And finally, he grabs a meditation site, he meditates on it, and penetrates with vipassana, today we would say, with wisdom. I shall just say a few more words on the first 2 Vimukti-yatana. No time to read, the Pali is here. I will just summarize the gist of it. It says the teacher teaches Dhamma to a bhikkhu, and in the manner, I've already translated earlier, in the manner the teacher teaches the Dhamma, in that very same manner, this represents commitment, faithful listening, receptive listening, and so on. In that very same manner, he comes to gain unmitigated insight or knowledge into the meaning of what he has learned. And this is called parisangveda. Then to him who is so gaining direct insight, joyousness arises. When you can learn and be inspired like this, there's a tremendous amount of positive energy that is being released, and that's joy. And from that joy, you have rapture, and from rapture, you have tranquility. Tranquility is a form of subtle joyfulness. And then even your body, not only your mind is tranquilized, your body is tranquilized, and you experience what is called bliss, sukha. And when your mind, body are experiencing sukha, you come to gain samadhi. Now, this is not just concentration as ordinarily translated in English. Samadhi represents the fact of unification of all our disintegrated energies, all come together, unified, and a good word will be equipoise. Then, to add to this, the Sanskrit version adds a couple of interesting steps to this. Next, so equipoise, samahita, he knows and sees truly as they are. Knowing and truly as they are, he becomes disgusted, he becomes detached, and he is liberated. So it's a whole process, progressive liberation, and at each state, he comes to attain subtler and subtler bliss. The Buddha's path is a path of bliss. Buddha's way is a path of bliss and happiness and freedom. And this is all through Buddhist education in the way that is highlighted. To summarize, what we can learn from this first phase is, first, the pupil does not simply accumulate knowledge, intellectual knowledge, and information. Through his own receptivity and being inspired by the teacher's teaching according to truth, the pupil is transformed. Hence, this is creative. That's why we call this kind of education creative education. And uplifted to higher and higher and more joyful, inspiring planes of experiences. The person is ultimately fully liberated. He transcends the human the existential predicament, and he acquires both knowledge and wisdom. Not just knowledge, but wisdom, liberating wisdom. The second base, I think I can have to go faster. And the main point here is that you can transform yourself, as I say, as a teacher. You don't just transform the list your student, but in the very process of very sincere, existentially motivated, meta-motivated manner, you come to be transformed. Yeah. I will just highlight one example. I have two examples in detail for you, and you can read the details. I will just have time to highlight one example. This is from the Pali sources. The other one is from the Sanskrit sources called the Ashoka Avadana. I'll leave that out. So the first one from the Pali Milinda Panna, the story goes like this. We all know the brilliant Venerable Nagasena. And one day, an old upasika came to him and offered dana to him. And that female devotee then requests Venerable Nagasena for a profound sermon. He doesn't just want ping, doesn't just want marriage. He wants to be inspired by the Dhamma. And she wants to be Dhamma, she wants to practice it. And she said like this, "Dear Nagasena, I'm old. Please give me a profound anumodana in the form of a profound Dhamma discourse." I'm translating very literally. You can notice that in her request, she expresses what we may call existential anguish, as much as also her sincerity. Without doubt, she is meta-motivated, in Maslow's term. Nagasena's sermon in response results in both himself and the listener attaining stream and tree. The description goes like this. I just translated English. Then Venerable Nagasena preached to that elder Upasika a profound thanksgiving discourse, that is Anumodana, not just to please her. Usually now you give a discourse like that at the end of a dana simply to make to gladden, and that's also important, of course, the giver. But he wants to transform the lady and he himself gets transformed that way. Then Venerable Nagasena preached to that Upasika the profound thanksgiving discourse that is supramundane when related to emptiness. Then to that elder Upasika seated on the very seat, immediately, in other words, the dust-free taintless Dhamma eye arose. And the Venerable Nagasena also having given that Anumodana, while reflecting on the Dhamma taught by himself, established insight. And the very seat, he Rich Davis, Professor Rich Davis underscores Nagasena also, while he has that Thanksgiving discourse, felt the force of the truths he himself has preached. And he too arrived at insight. I'll jump to conclusion now. While modern Buddhism, 1,500 years or more ago in the Indian environment, but at least in some ways and to some extent, it can learn from the principles underlying what we term transformative education, expounded in the Vimukta Ayatana Sutta. Of particular relevance, of course, are the first two that were highlighted, learning and teaching the Dhamma. What are we doing here? We are learning and we are teaching and hopefully also learning. And the students are learning, right? Rather than being utterly overwhelmed and completely conditioned by the modern, especially I would say, or essentially I would say, Western value structure. Let's remind ourselves, be mindful. It is time for us to ponder over the purpose and methodology of teaching Buddhism. Mindfulness must be practiced here of the true purpose of Buddhist education. Not just teaching as a job, not even as a career, but as a practice of the Dhamma. We saw above that for our teaching and learning to be transformative psychologically, and spiritually, both the learn. I use the word spiritually in a very vague sense, of course, admittedly, because it's a very difficult term to bring out all the connotations. But I mean something higher than just the intellectual, something higher than just what we understand as the so-called psychological today. The teacher must first be aware of the purpose of existence. And this is where religion comes in. Whether we think of religion as involving a God or not, but this is religion in the true sense. Be sincere and motivated. When these prerequisites are fulfilled, religious education can and should lead to progressive unfolding of the human potential, and according to what we have seen above, according to the Buddhist tradition, the Buddha's way, this can be a progressively joyful and fulfilling process. Thank you very much.